everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr and more now that the season is officially here with Kevin Noon. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, we have been looking forward to this college football season basically since the end of the last college football season, but maybe even more than normal. And we are now about 95 or so % through the first game of the season. And already we might have the first incredibly shocking upset, season-changing, narrative-defining game. And it's happening in Ireland. And it might make the Florida State band sad. Do you, Tony, make up words for fight songs you don't know? Because I do. And you want me to tell you the words for the Florida State fight song?
Go ahead.
Learn another song. We've heard this a lot.
Now we're demonetized.
They don't quite match Oklahoma in terms of like you play one song too many times, but it's up there. It is really up there.
Kevin, how are you doing?
Doing well. We got like a minute and change left in this game, so I think everybody who's watching us is going to see us like turning our heads towards the TV as it's going on. But woke up this morning and I was like, "Hey, it's college football. That's pretty awesome."
It is, and so we're all at different areas here. So I'm at 105, 104, 103. Tom, where are you right now?
I'm
already
watching a
commercial. Yeah, okay. I'm already watching a commercial.
Okay. So
Tony, they're about to hit a pothole. Watch out.
So you guys will have to.
Tom is way ahead. I'm a little behind there, and then you're, in the third quarter.
I'm interested to watch this game-winning kick attempt to see if you guys can poker face it and like not let me know what has happened. And
hashtag Irish kickers.
Well, here's the thing. Something crazy goes on, and you're gonna have to be like, I don't think you guys can pull that off in the week 0, the start of the season. It's still preseason for you jokers.
It is. I will do my very best to not spoil it, and I'm sure people who are listening to this later on the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed are going, I hope they're not going to do this all season. No. Special. This is special week 0 live content. This is kind of like the year that, what was it, 2022, when USC lost the Pac-12 championship game, and we're like, we'll do an 11:45 p.m. live show for no reason. Like this kind of, we talked about doing this, and then the game was far more compelling than I think anyone expected it to be, and so it was like, sure, we can do a live show.
Yeah, I'm at commercial now. So I've been a little impressed with the fact that this game, there was a 2-point conversion, some field goals, and somehow we have gotten to 21-21. Like that's been the most entertaining aspect of this. Like, how are they going to get there? And they've made a 59-yard field goal in there to help that. Which again, Mike Norvell, the game management has been a little bit wonky, I would say, and then you include the fact that he also calls plays, and it's like, oh, I see. We're starting the picture is becoming clearer with Ryan Day and game management and calling plays. I'm seeing it clearer now, Kevin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's sense of urgency right now. I mean, we did get to finally see a 2-minute warning here in the second 2-minute warning we've had an opportunity to see. We saw the one in the first half and now the one in the second half. At a meaningful moment, it would have been a point of where Mike Norvell would have had to take a timeout. But I just think that there's something about Power 4 coaches in the state of Florida not really, understanding clock management or things of that nature. But, it's really nice that Florida State is going to get their loss out of the way now instead of like taking us all the way through to playing Georgia in the Orange Bowl. They should probably take down all of their national championship trophies and everything else that they awarded to themselves.
This is a game where, Mike Norvell's clock management hasn't been good, but have you watched the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball? Like this was supposed to be, there were people talking about Florida State having the best defensive line in the country as of literally a day ago. And they have just gotten their tails kicked on both sides of the ball. just to pull up the stats real quick, average yards per rush, Georgia Tech 5.7, Florida State 3.2. It's just not going, the ball's just not going anywhere on the ground for Florida State. And Georgia Tech has really just been able to push them around all day. Georgia Tech had a 14 or 15 play drive earlier. Mm-hmm. That was a whole bunch of, this is my poker face. You're not seeing what's happening based on my face right now, but you'll see it later. Georgia Tech earlier in the game was able to run the ball, and they had a 14, 15 play drive that was just a bunch of 5-6 yard gains. Florida State had a drive where it was a bunch of 2-yard runs and then a 3rd and 9 pass, a 4th and 7 pass. It has been amazing how much Florida State has gotten whomped on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball.
Really quickly on that. I mean, the equalizing drive, they had to convert a couple 4th and longs. This has been kind of a case of if Georgia Tech would have been able to get home on one of those plays, that, we're looking at a very different geometry. And now that we've all seen it, even the slowest of TV feeds, Georgia Tech, bad snap or something, knocked themselves into a 3rd and 18, not ideal, especially when they showed that their kicker has never attempted a fourth quarter crucial type of kick. But who here has?
That's fine. Yeah, I'm sure that's fine. There's no reason for that to be any kind of concern for anybody. As I see Tom already like the great smile going on.
They haven't even snapped it. I'm just so happy to have football back and be able to watch.
The thing I like about getting to watch Haynes King like for an entire game is that every snap is an adventure. Not all of the adventures are good. There's a lot of drama there. But at any given point, he can pick up a first down for you in the craziest way possible. So I think there's a lot to like there. As I'm seeing a quick screen, and they are now in field goal range. I'm sure this is going to go fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I got to tell you, watching this, they keep showing these shots from behind the offense, and the sun is setting. It looks like a really incredible stadium. I'm watching this and thinking, boy, I know they have Iowa State and Kansas State there next year. I would not mind if Ohio State went and played this game in a couple of years against whoever.
I was wondering before this, I was thinking like, who would I like to see? And my first thought was like Texas, but it wouldn't be a Texas. It would be like a Boston College or a Vanderbilt or something like that. I did see, watching game day, like the weather looked fantastic, and the weather was fantastic at the start of the game. And then they just show this downpour coming out of nowhere. But even at the end of game day, you can see like clouds rolling in. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's just, it's like 5 o'clock there. It's getting dark. But no, those were rain clouds. But apparently it does that a lot over there.
It's 5 o'clock in Ireland all the time. At least, that's a drinking joke.
Well, and they have ESPN has really played into that. I'm sure I don't know whether the tourism board likes that or does not like that. And I'm just watching old clips now, and I'm like, they're showing something. Is this? Yeah.
Yeah, they showed earlier and now for Tony,
I was going to say Fort Wayne, call it, make it or miss it.
I can already tell you the answer, but
the hell with that.
He makes it. Tom is disappointed.
Rest assured, I'm correct about my pick. I did enjoy the shot that they showed just before this of the time Georgia Tech blocked a potential game-winning field goal at the gun against Florida State in probably 2015, something like that. That was the game where it gives you the famous Paul Johnson gif where he's sticking his tongue out and bobbing his head around like a bobblehead afterwards with the state troopers. One of those great moments, classic game-ending moments. Has everyone seen the results of the kick? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So we are one game into college football in the year of our Lord 2024, and we already have a top 10 upset. I don't want to say, and also we had an 11er in the first half of the first game, 11 points for Florida State at one point. This is setting up to be, I don't want to overhype things, but everything right now is pointing to this is not just the greatest season in the history of college football, but the greatest season in the history of any sport ever in the history of the entire world. Your thoughts?
I don't think that's out of line. I don't think that is crazy, but I will also say I don't think Florida State should have ever been a top 10 team.
Well,
And
yes,
they lost a whole bunch of NFL talent, and more importantly, they lost Jordan Travis, and they added DJ Uiagalelei, who we know who he is and what he is, and this was a perfect example of it today, where there's only so much he can do in the passing game. He can't do much in the running game, and there's some limitations, and eventually things get figured out, and plays don't necessarily get made, even though he did have a nice drive there at the end. But we talked about the graphic before the show of the average air distance or whatever, like negative 0.1 yards basically per attempt for a while there. And so and I said this for many months, I've been saying it. Everybody knows I've been saying it. Georgia or Florida State should not be anywhere near any top 10. I'm not picking them in the ACC. I have not. I think I've been more. I'm more in tune with SMU than FSU in terms of the possibilities here.
Yeah, this may be the greatest game I've seen this year in Ireland. I mean, easily. I think that this game is going to be a case of who had the ball last, because both teams were able to string together long drives and everything else. And we'll have to go back and look and see, how much time did Florida State leave on the clock and everything else. I mean, I agree with Tony that Florida State certainly was a interesting pick by a lot of the pollsters. I mean, you can go back and remember them going whatever it was, winning 13-0 before going and getting frog stomped by Georgia. But DJU, bit of an unknown, just a lot of talent lost, everything else. And now the Big Ten can really tell FSU, no, we're not interested. We're not interested in you. Our teams don't lose in Ireland.
Can I just read real quickly from Pete Thamel 3 hours ago? 3 hours ago. Here's our College Game Day hit from Dublin, where we dive into Florida State's defensive line. Multiple NFL scouts told ESPN they expect Florida State to have the country's best starting defensive line this year. How fast has a College Game Day segment ever gotten freezing cold takes? Because it feels like this might be not only the earliest in the season, but also the shortest amount of time after broadcast.
Well, and when he said that, and that's not his opinion, that's people telling him that, it certainly may be like, well, okay, maybe. I mean, it would know better than I would, but kind of feel like, well, maybe, maybe not. But you like, well, who are they? Who are these people? These 4 people who have never been in my kitchen. But you can't lose all the guys you lost last year, and then have this influx of wherever they came from. You got one guy from Miami, you got one guy from this place. They're the best starting 4, and boy, I don't think they were. And they had a lot of time to prepare. And I know the first game is always you're kind of reacting to a lot of stuff because you don't have necessarily everything that the film to go off of. But if you are the best defensive line, you're going to show up in week 1, and you're going to make life more difficult for the offense than the offense makes for you. And I don't think that was the case. And I'm just looking at the rushing yards here for Georgia Tech, and it was 190 yards, and that's including the sacks. So that's not a good look.
Yeah, 190 yards, including the sacks, also including the bad snap right at the end that probably cost them 10 yards. I mean, they had a couple where they lost. They had a couple bad exchanges or bad snaps or something that cost them that was, had nothing to do with anything Florida State did. That was probably another 20-something yards. You had the one where the wide receiver was just wide open on the out breaking route and just slipped on the grass, and that was a 3rd down. I mean, Florida State was lucky to get that to the final minutes tied at 21.
Yeah,
I don't disagree. Go ahead, Tony.
4 different Georgia Tech guys with at least a 10-yard carry in that one. So plenty of explosive plays as well as just some consistency. But DJ 19 of 27 for 193 yards. I got a message from somebody talking about that lack of distance and the lack of plays being made in the passing game. And the message was that it's not just DJ Uiagalelei, it's that Florida State has no playmakers at receiver. And it's like, well, that may be correct as well, because if you have an average quarterback, if you want him to be above average, your receivers have to make him above average, and they didn't do that.
I was just going through through the stats and going through their offensive roster, Florida State's, and I'm just like, I know who Toafil is. I know who some of these guys are, but there isn't that difference maker. They didn't have that guy that they got from Michigan State in the portal that is going to lead them into these types of situations. So it makes it difficult to have, to have that guy that you can go to. This is a guy I'm going to throw to in 3rd and 6. This is a guy I'm going to, that I'm going to lean upon. I don't see that on this roster at this point. And you look through, I mean, they ran for, sack adjusted 98 yards. I mean, that I would have expected more out of a top 10 team.
Well, someone who would not have expected more out of a top 10 team was Mike Farino. He says, Super Chat, 59-yard field goal and a trick 2-point conversion. They ran that swinging gate on that opening drive. To have the game this close, Florida State was the worst team other than special teams in every way. This, I think, goes back to the old football cliche. The games are won and lost in the trenches, and Florida State just flat got their tails kicked in the trenches on both sides of the ball. That's it. I mean, we can talk about game management, and that absolutely played a factor. We can talk about the skill talent on Florida State. That absolutely played a factor. If you lose the game in the trenches, you generally lose the game.
No, I would agree. But also, just my main thought coming out of this is next week, take Georgia State in the points against Georgia Tech.
Yeah, they're celebrating a big win in Ireland before flying back across it. Yeah, yeah. Other than the jails of Dublin will be filled with people with Tallahassee driver's licenses, I'm not sure there's a safer bet than tonight. I'm not sure there's a safer bet than Georgia State over at least pushing Georgia Tech next week.
And then Florida State is at Syracuse the week after, which will be an interesting game to watch. Georgia Tech is at Syracuse. Now that the first place, there you go, first place in the ACC, Georgia Tech, possible playoff team, Georgia Tech.
The word possible doing a lot of heavy lifting there, but
hey, I didn't say probable. Two different words.
Do you guys have any games later on today? I mean, there's only 4 games today, but is there one coming up later today? Like, this was obviously the headline or the marquee game. You have one that you're coming up later on today that you're kind of interested to watch just because?
Yeah, for me, it's SMU and Nevada. I want to see, I'm an SEC fiend, ACC fiend, and we all know that. I love the ACC. It's my favorite conference, and I love ACC teams, and SMU is one of my favorite ACC teams. But I do want to see what they look like. Nevada is very, very bad, so this should give us a good look at how good SMU can be. But, I mean, it's an 8 p.m. game. I know, Tom, you're probably Hawaii, that sort of thing, and I don't know that do you have the Spectrum Sports Team One Sports app to be able to watch Delaware State at Hawaii at 11:59 p.m. tonight?
Well, Tony, I will refer you to my timeline on twitter.com where I quote tweeted the Hawaii football account earlier this afternoon with the specific instructions on how to get them with the hashtag news you can use. So yes, Tony, I am extremely ready for it. I do
illegal stream.
This is legal unless Hawaii is tweeting out illegal streams from their athletic department account, which I don't believe is what happens. But yeah, I do have I have to be at an ice rink at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, so that might impact exactly how much of the Hawaii game I watch. But yes, I am very much looking forward to Hawaii, Delaware State, and Delaware State is extraordinarily bad. I believe Hawaii is a 40-something point favorite, and Delaware State had trouble even getting to Hawaii. They missed their flight out of New York, and so got there I think in several different pieces over the course of a day or so. That's not going to help at all, but that is just one of those. How much Hawaii football you watch tells me exactly how much of a college football sicko you are, and I'm probably on the far right tail of that particular bell curve.
Yeah, I'm not going to go out of my way to see that game, but if it's there, if I can figure out how to find it, if I can get the news you can use, I might watch it. certainly going to watch the game coming up on FS1 here
Mhm.
at 4:00. Then I'm going to get to find out if I have CBS Sportsnet, because some days I do and some days I don't, and it's just hard to tell. So, yes, I am a sicko who's going to watch a lot of college football, but I'm not sure I want to live in a world where Hawaii is a 40-point favorite, because generally they're a 40-point dog.
Well, hey, as long as Timmy Chang is involved, he can get it done. I'm usually I start to crash around 11:30 on a Saturday with when it's all football, like coming back from a game or something like that. It's unless I'm getting back, but even after like a 3:30 game, I'm usually getting home around, I don't know, like 11:30 or so. So I miss a lot of the late stuff, and the late stuff I'll have it on and then I'll just zonk out. Is anybody going to be watching Ross Bjork's son at 3:30 with McNeese State at Tarleton?
Is that on the Ocho?
That is that is on the Deuce. Actually, the kids used to call it the Deuce, but that is the next game up. 3:30, McNeese State at Tarleton, FCS, I believe. So have at it there.
I believe Southland Conference. I believe it's the Southland Conference.
Here's the thing. Just say it, and everyone will kind of go, "Yeah, that's probably," and move on with their life.
Yeah, the Moon Belt.
Yes.
I like the comment here from Christopher Sowers. I think Will Howard is a better passer and a little faster. Oh, I'm sorry, I was reading the one above that about Will Howard can play like Haynes King. The Buckeyes would be unstoppable. I think. Then it goes to if Will Howard is a better passer. Yeah, I think that's the key. And it's great to have a quarterback that can pick up the random 3rd and 9. It's better to have one that keeps you out of 3rd and 9 through completions and things like that. So you want a more consistent quarterback because, again, Haynes King, great. You live and die with him. But did Florida State deserve to be in this game? Should this have been 21-21 and you're kicking a field goal at the end? Haynes King, if he plays better and doesn't put the ball on the ground, things like that, completes some passes, then you don't have this down to the wire game that could be lost on one play. Because as we've seen, if you rely on just a long field goal, it doesn't always go well for you.
Well, cite one example that you can think of that we saw in person. Come on, please.
I will not do that.
Just looking at, they put the Florida State schedule up on TV just a second ago, and they've got some time to get stuff sorted out. The rest of well, I was going to say the rest of September should be pretty manageable, but they just lost to Georgia Tech. So Boston College, Memphis, Cal, and at SMU. They could lose at SMU, but then they've got Clemson at home in October 5th, at Duke, at Miami, October 26th, North Carolina at home, at Notre Dame, November 9th, and then they finish with Florida at home. I mean, this is now Florida State's basically in a spot where they more or less need to run the table. Like maybe you could lose one more and then slide into the ACC championship game, but this is a spot where a team that came in top 10 thinking, oh boy, you saw them get projected to the college football playoff in a lot of places. We are not to September yet, and you are now in, oh boy, the spot where a lot of people were before, where now you can't afford another loss probably, or maybe you can afford one more loss, but you have burned through your margin of error already. That is not a great, that is going to be a long flight home for those guys.
Well, I mean, do you see a 2-loss ACC team getting in short of winning the ACC championship game?
No.
So, yeah, they've got to win. They've got to win because this. I've seen a lot of predictions showing 5 from the SEC getting into this 12-team field, 3 from the Big Ten. I mean, maybe you even that out and say 4 and 4, but you start to tick off spots. There's not a lot of room for the other 2 Power 4 conferences to fart around and have success. So there's going to be a lot of pressure, and I don't like FSU in pressure. I don't think FSU is a team that performs well under pressure. This isn't necessarily even just a Mike Norvell thing. I can remember Willie Taggart. I mean, it's just a team that does not do well under pressure.
Well, I think you look at the Florida State-Florida game at the end of the season, to me, that could be a game. The winner ends up with 7 wins. The loser does not. Like, that's going to be a contest for the 7th win of the season, because I think I'm not even convinced. Like, watch out for Memphis coming into town in September 14th to Doak Campbell. Like, Memphis is a good team, and Florida State at that point, they need to stop moping and be ready for that, or else something very bad could happen to them.
Yeah, and I mean, you go through the rest of that ACC schedule, and you have to figure Clemson's going to have a loss in a week from now when they play Georgia. You've got Miami. You know, the fun part about the FSU Miami game is someone always has to lose, and it generally, win or lose, Miami generally blows it the next week. I don't even know who they have the next week, but you know, Notre Dame, Clemson. I mean, you've got a lot of teams where Florida State feels like they are probably like pushing out of the picture already in some ways. But man, that is the ACC. This game feels like it makes me think it is much more likely the ACC just gets the one team in this year. Super chat from Fort Wayne Buckeye. As media members, thoughts on Colorado and Deion's most recent controversy? Can you be more specific? Oh, thank you. About not taking questions from one reporter.
Yeah,
go ahead,
I
and
mean,
I'll jump
I'm
in.
talking to the columnist from the Denver Post, because a columnist doing columnist things and writing pieces that have, you know, strong opinions and everything else. And let's be honest that, you know, there's some weirdness around Deion's program in terms of how he handles roster management, parenting, everything else. And now I can't even watch commercials anymore because he's in like 70 commercials. It's bad form. It's bad form for the university, for Deion. However, you know, wherever that really, you know, that buck stops there to no longer, you know, take questions from the columnist. I mean, it more than likely just solidifies anything that the columnist was saying. And, you know, okay, keep him outside the velvet rope. See what he writes then.
I'm just looking at the because I wanted to bring up the sustained personal attacks that Colorado said that this columnist was making, Sean Keeler from the Denver Post. And you got here, deposition Deion, false prophet, Planet Prime, which I don't think is bad. I mean, the Bruce Lee of BS. I mean, you start throwing stuff like that out, and you know there might be some repercussions. The Deion Kool-Aid and circus, and using all of those and descriptions of Colorado and Deion Sanders. And so I think when it gets personal like that, if you don't think the coach might also get personal, then you're crazy. Like, you're not untouchable as a reporter, but also you're the head coach of a major college football program. You should be able to handle and take some criticism, and then also rebut it. Like, this isn't a circus. This is all very organized. Let me explain to you why this is not a circus. Let me explain to you why you shouldn't call me deposition Deion, and because I will sue you if you do. Like, these are how often do we see this is not the first time a coach has refused to take questions from an outlet or a person, but this is not the first time Deion has done it either, which is the larger issue, because he's not the first coach to get name called or criticized or repeatedly criticized by a hometown newspaper.
Right. Well, and I think my first issue with this is understanding how the media works and how a news outlet works. I'm perfectly happy to have a conversation or defend things that I have said or written or whatever. Someone else saying something like, that ain't me, brother. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm perfectly happy to have a conversation about that. If I write something you get mad about, we can have that conversation. But, well, someone else who is there, it's like when people get mad at newspaper writers for like, well, that was a bad headline. It's like, well, understand how newspapers work. The author doesn't write the headline. That's someone else's job. So that's, I think, one part of it. The other part of it is, if you want to do the look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Hey, it's a look, what? No, look here, look, hey, look right here. If you want to do that, that's fine. But when people are looking at you and you go, what, 3-9, 4-8, like, well, guess what? everyone saw because you told everyone to look at you. Guess what? That's not very good. That's not a good. And if you're going to come in talking about changing the game and reinventing football or whatever he talked about, like, you're going to get held to a standard of, hey, I expect to see something at least halfway decent. And it was not halfway decent last year. And it has been all about Deion since Deion was at Jackson State. That's what Deion wants. He wants it to be all about Deion. And then if it's bad, well, if it's all about Deion when it's good, then it's all about Deion when it's bad. And so when it's all about Deion when it's bad, some people are going to write some things, and you might get your fifis hurt, and that's okay. You just have to deal with it and move on.
Well, and when you're talking, saying, "Hey, look at me," I thought you were talking about the columnist, because you could say the same thing there.
Sure. And if they want to shut him out, like, that's fine. The dude who's writing, who's the beat guy for the Denver Post, that's a different thing. Like, you want to shut the columnist out, that's fine. You don't shut out the whole. Mm-hmm. They did this with CBS, like the local CBS College Sports or something said something they didn't like, and then like the local CBS guy, they're like, well, we're not taking questions for you. It's like, that's not. I've never met those people. Like, that's not even close to how any of this works.
Well, and Kevin, and I'll let you go, but I just want to say, like, the question itself, not taking questions from one reporter, not a reporter, it's a columnist. Very different thing. Columnist writing about his feelings and what he thinks, and reporters writing about what is happening. So two very different jobs requiring very different, you write very different things. Columnist talks about I, me, I, you, and reporter just talks about the situation and what the happenings and things like that, and reports. So two different things. And so I would have a tremendous issue with not taking, I have issues regardless, but taking issue with not answering questions from a reporter, a beat reporter, who is just, all they report about is stuff that's going bad. It's like, well, you had 9 losses last year. We're going to report the losses. We can't just talk about things. Yeah, stop doing bad things. We'll stop reporting on the bad things. But the columnist having those kinds of names, like, you have to realize that there may be repercussions from your own language.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of this could have been handled internally somewhat. I think how it's usually handled. I think that Colorado just thrives on chaos, and you have to keep throwing chaos into the tank engine to keep this thing moving. And I just have an issue with it going on like that. I mean, I've read plenty of columns that I don't agree with, but you know what? You're the coach who's making $5, $6, $7, $8, $10, $12 million a year, whatever. Toughen up, Buttercup.
I do like the idea that you should only be reporting on the good things. Tony, why aren't you writing about all the Georgia football players who haven't been arrested for drag racing? Why aren't you writing about that?
That's true. Today, but as of this moment, at 3:33, no arrests. Congratulations. So this player has not been arrested. And then, you get the phone call. You're like, I just reported yesterday that this guy, now I got to do a retraction. How many retractions would you have to do on the Georgia beat if you're just writing about the people who didn't get arrested the day before?
Many, many, many of them. We have a bunch of user or viewer questions. We want to hit some of those right now.
Let's do it.
So let's start with one about Ohio State. Lisa Sims wants to know who is going to have the audio helmet this year, Kevin?
Well, obviously on offense, you're going to have your quarterback wearing it. On defense, I believe Cody Simon is like your main guy that is going to be wearing it. I mean, because we've always talked about through the years that generally your Mike linebacker, it's not always the Mike, but generally your Mike is going to be the guy that's going to call the defensive plays, or at least, get everybody in position as need be. So yeah, they've done some work where different guys have had the green dot and have, because what happens when Cody Simon isn't out there? Well, you're going to have somebody who's going to be wearing a green dot or whatever. So that's a simple answer right there, but I think we'll see it spread around a little bit.
Yes, the Mike linebacker, MIC linebacker.
Oh.
I see what you did there.
You could drop right now. That attitude, mister.
Made out of this damn show.
Joshua says, "What's up, guys? Love the live shows. We are happy to be back and have football to talk about. It's always good.
It's that time of year."
From the Rod Farva, the most underrated fight song in the country. I assume he's got to be talking about
Georgia Tech
fight song.
Hell of an engineer.
The whole Georgia Tech football package, including, the Ramblin' Wreck, the old car they drive in the field. Like, there's some cool stuff that they do there that Georgia Tech has been so bad since Paul Johnson left that it really, I feel like they've kind of fallen off the map. That's a school that we have talked about maybe fits into the Big Ten's plans at some point in the future, if and when the ACC explodes and we go to a Big Two, just because it's a Georgia school in a big city and obviously an incredible academic institutions that would fit with the Big Ten in a lot of different ways. That's a place where we were down there for the Peach Bowl a couple of years ago, and that is walking distance from the Olympic Park downtown and from the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It was probably, our hotel was like a 10-minute walk from the stadium, and the Georgia Tech campus was maybe a 20 or 30-minute walk from our hotel. Walked around there a lot. It is not a huge stadium. It's kind of, it's a city campus. It's all kind of packed in there, but that is a place that would be a fun place to have on the schedule every few years if they join the Big Ten, getting to go back to Atlanta and College Football Hall of Fame and all that kind of fun stuff.
Going back to that question real quick. I'll ask both of you, what were your high school fight songs? What college fight song did they steal for their own fight song? Because ours was the Minnesota Rouser.
I have no idea on either of them. I mean, I went to two high schools. I mean, I'm assuming my high school in California wasn't SC or UCLA. So I'm not sure. And then my high school in New Hampshire, I don't know, probably something about Chip Kelly or Ryan Day.
That would have been an amazing. Our fight song is about 6-year-old Ryan Day. Yes, that's that, frankly would have been a little creepy. Our high school didn't really have a fight song. We were the Tigers, so
the surrender song.
We played "Eye of the Tiger" sometimes.
We give up. We are sorry. Please let us up.
Taylor Ham.
Yeah, that was yes. It was the Taylor Ham song. Yes. Here's a good one, Tony. From our buddy McChickens. He was at the Ontario game last night. Should have tracked Tony down for an autograph. Tony, do you sign, first of all? Second of all, what do you charge for signing? And third of all, what'd you see out of Bodie Miller?
Well, first, I do not sign for anybody. That's the only way that I can keep the value up. So when I'm short of cash, I'll go ahead and sign some and then I'll sell them. So like I'll take them to a dealer, stuff like that, mint. So I don't want too many out there. Huh?
He's a tattoo artist.
No, but I don't. No, I don't. I do not do that in public. But Bodpin Miller, like he plays quarterback and he's like 6'3", 6'4", 210 pounds, 205 pounds. And as I put on the Buckeye Huddle message board, physically he kind of looks like Benjamin Victor, who is like long leg, long arm, but he's not nearly as angular and choppy as like Benjamin Victor was, where it would take Victor time to pick up speed and cut and things. Like Miller is a lot more sudden and he's quicker and he's probably faster. But Brian Hartline obviously offered him a scholarship. He committed. Didn't see anything of him at receiver. He plays corner as well, and they put him on the team's best receiver, who's a top 100 player who is projected as a tight end. But he was on him most of the night, and then through all the first half, and then in the second half, he was kind of worn down a little. So even to start the third quarter, they only played him basically on passing downs, and then he would lock up the other guy. And so it was impressive to watch a guy. The reason I went is just to see, like, he's going to get rushed and he's going to have to create something out of nothing. And that's what I want to go see. And there's some of that, and posted a highlight video on YouTube. So you can find that after you check this out, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle.
And right before you do that, go ahead and hit the thumbs up on this video. That will help other folks find the show, which we always appreciate. And guess what? If you like these, that's a great way to encourage us to do more, because then more people watch, and then that's how it works. So if you can do that, we would appreciate that. Let's talk about a different high school football player. This is one that none of us were at the game last night. Mark was, Christopher Sowers. Tavian St. Clair said after his game that he has been talking to Micah DeBose a lot. So, Kevin, I guess before we get into Micah DeBose, there was another commitment today that you and Mark did a show about. Let's talk real quickly about Ohio State adding an interior offensive lineman to their 2025 class.
Yeah, Javon McFadden out of Maryland. Ohio State beat out Colorado, Maryland, and South Carolina. So some people are going to be like, well, that's not a lot of star power. And as Mark said on the Skull Session Recruiting podcast that we posted earlier today, you got to remember that Colorado went out and got Jordan Seaton, so that was their pitch. Maryland still manages to keep kids at home, and South Carolina has done a great job of recruiting the DMV area, going out and getting Nicholas Harbor, going out and getting Dylan Stewart. So don't fret because there wasn't an Alabama or a Georgia in there. 6'5", 300, 6'4", 290. I think there's a little debate of where he is. He looks like a guard to me. I mean, maybe they could talk about swinging him out to tackle. I need to see what he looks like out in space a little bit more, but, huge get there. And then as for Christopher's comment there, yeah, Tavian St. Clair did say he's been talking to Micah DeBose a lot. I think maybe Tavian St. Clair is a little bit more bullish on Ohio State's chances than a lot of recruiting experts, myself included, but, just stay on him. Just stay on him at this point and kind of see what comes out of it.
Well, I'll say, Tom, real quick, any guard that they sign is just a tackle waiting to happen.
I when I looked at Austin Sierveld, I did not see future college tackle, and it sounds like he's at least shown that it's a possibility. So you never know. That's a position where there's so much development that happens. You never really know. Speaking of things we didn't know, I didn't realize we talked about Boston College and Florida State. That Florida State's next game. Did you realize that that's the Monday night Labor Day national TV game? Oh boy, how excited do you think Florida State fans are going to be to go watch their team play Boston College and have the whole nation listening to the announcers talk about the fact that they blew it last week against Georgia Tech?
Or that before, I mean, the middle of the month of September, they could be out of the mix. I mean, if they drop that game and they're 0-2, it's going to be awfully difficult because, okay, you can go in and you can win the ACC title, but you're going to already be 2 games down in league play at that point. You're going to have to climb over a bunch of teams at that point. So there is nothing for certain there. So yeah, this is going to be that's going to be a tough watch for Seminole fans because it's like everything is on the table right now. And they spent the whole offseason bitching and moaning about getting left out of the CFP. Well, here, smoke this entire carton.
Speaking of people that may not want to watch TV, Stephen Cherry says, Desmond Howard in midseason form with his anti-Buckeye takes. I walked in the door from a different hockey thing this morning and turned on the TV just a few minutes before the Florida State game was on. And they were picking conference champions and national champions. The whole panel picked, including Nick Saban and Kirk Herbstreit, picked Ohio State. Desmond Howard picked Oregon. What was interesting to me, though, was the whole panel no one on the panel picked Ohio State to win the national championship. Herbstreit and Desmond picked Oregon, and I think the other 2 guys picked Georgia. It was Saban and someone else, and then Seamus, the wrestler, picked Notre Dame because he's playing to the home crowd in Ireland, I guess.
He's Irish, dude.
Yeah, well, that's why it's the home crowd, dude. Owned. Anyway, so any thoughts on Desmond Howard's midseason form? And I will remind you, someone in the Columbus media has gotten fired for the Desmond Howard takes. So let's dial it back from like a 10 to at least a 6.
Kevin?
Desmond Howard is crazy. And that's it. He's like, he is a Muppet up there, and you should just not listen to what he says or do the opposite because he is a Muppet.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much know what he's going to say before he says it. I thought this was also going to be about the Ryan Day. Ohio State has already hired Ryan Day's replacement and Chip Kelly from a day ago, which it's interesting. Here's a story for you. So I was on ESPN radio today, talking about Ohio State, but the only topic that we talked about previewing the Ohio State season was Ryan Day's job security in Michigan. That's all we talked about. And what are the chances he gets fired, that sort of thing. And I just kept having to just keep repeating the same things that I always say, that it's never about losing to Michigan. It's about losing to Michigan and something else. It's losing to Michigan and losing your team. And that's what John Cooper did. Losing to Michigan and punching a football player, punching an opposing player, that sort of thing. But the idea that you could lose to Michigan a fourth time in a row, and that's all that you've done. Everything else is good except for that. And people think that he's going to be fired. And I know people in the comments here, but it was just interesting that there's so much, and in one of the hosts was even there's so much good going on around Ohio State right now, but yeah, this is the topic. I'm who you telling? This is I've been talking to you for 10 minutes now, and that's all we're talking about. And so I just thought it was interesting that that's where the focus is nationally right now, and that's where but it's also, I guess, regionally and locally as well. But it's a lot of pressure, and they're is the pressure fair? Is the criticism fair? I'm the pressure is fair because you're at Ohio State. It's the same pressure you have at Georgia. It's the same pressure you have at Alabama. The pressure is there. The criticism, I think, yeah, don't lose to Michigan, but also you're only criticizing this one thing because it's the only thing there is to criticize. Now, it's a big thing, but it's not the only thing. And so I think there are a lot of good things going on at Ohio State, and to be fired for one bad thing. And I never brought up the cheating, but it's that also needs to be part of the discussion, because as I have said on the Buckeye Huddle message board, you can't be an Ohio State fan that is Michigan cheated, and also Ryan Day should be fired for losing to Michigan. You can't; those two can't they can't exist in the same physical space, logically, in my opinion.
So you're expecting people who are angry on the internet to hold completely logically consistent?
Yes.
When are you going to go on the internet for the first time?
You know what? I like my World Book Encyclopedia. JFK is still the president in my mind.
Yeah, don't get the update issue. That doesn't go well. That's actually a real good place to log off. That's a term from the internet. We'll talk about that later. Lisa Sims says, I can't wait to watch Will Howard play and see how good he is. A lot of people are not very high on him, but I'm going to give him a chance and see what he does first. Based on the talk around the Woody right now, Kevin, it feels like there are some people who are pretty high on him.
There are, but there'll be people outside of the Woody who will be quick to remind you that he got replaced at K-State. I mean, they had their young guy, and Will Howard became expendable. And, that isn't necessarily fair in terms of what if this kid's a 9 and Will Howard's an 8? And, an 8, not picking an 8. But, yeah, they're pretty excited about him over at the Woody. Certainly his running ability, we've heard multiple times about him being north of 20 miles per hour as a runner, which it takes me at least 10 seconds to get the car to 20 miles an hour. So, let alone being able to run it. Yeah. It was just a joke. I think that Lisa Sims and everybody's going to be pretty impressed, but I don't think we're going to see Ohio State coming out and running anything really complex for the first couple weeks, unless it wants to put something on tape. But when you're going against Akron and Marshall and Western Michigan, you're not necessarily going to be super taxed. And I think that is a good time with a quarterback who's not played a lot of time in your system, and then younger quarterbacks that you want to get some playing time for. It'll be good getting into really when things heat up in mid-October and Ohio State goes to Eugene.
Tom, Will Howard as fast as Chuck Woolery? 2-2. 22 miles per hour.
Well done.
I did tweet out earlier today about, once right around when game day was on, and they were talking about Ohio State making a splash in the transfer portal and all of this. And it's when they landed Will Howard, people are like, that's Kansas State's quarterback. He was benched. Did you know that? And it's no, he was never benched. He started every game he played there last year. And then, Seth McLaughlin, they got Alabama center. Did you watch him play against Michigan? Ha 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 ha. They get Quinshon Judkins, and all we hear from the Mississippi side of people is Lane Kiffin was glad he's gone. And this is a locker room issue, and Ole Miss is not going to miss him. Ha ha ha. Nobody even cared about Will Kazmarek. Like, Caleb Downs was a big splash. Julian Sayin is not going to play conceivably this year. So, like, this whole idea that Ohio State just comes in and has dominated the transfer portal like we all said that they would, or that's it's like, that's not the way anybody was talking. There was a lot of derision, and frankly, I think there still is about Will Howard. And there's still a lot to prove for Will Howard and all of these guys, frankly. But I just think it's interesting the way the narrative has shifted towards now that Ohio State is natty or bust, even though they're not the favorite to win it all, is another aspect that people seem to forget. And again, anybody that expects to win a national championship this year, any program, any fan base, be prepared to be disappointed, because this will be, as I keep saying, the most difficult national championship to win in the history of college football. So you can't expect to win it. Like, be happy if you win it. Be gosh darn it disappointed if you don't. But to think that it is owed to you or that it's going to happen, just prepare yourself.
Yeah, this is a team where Ohio State is coming in as one of, sort of broadly perceived as, maybe 4 teams that are strong favorites to potentially compete for that national championship. Just about every one of the projections you see in terms of college football playoff fields, you see Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas as sort of the final 4. And those are the teams that I think people are largely thinking are probably the 4 strongest contenders. Let's just say that, I mean, how many, Tony, 3.5 of those 4 teams make the final 4 of the college football playoff? Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon. 3.5 over under.
I would take the under on that one. I think there's going to be some chaos, and the ability to repeat what you're doing, the strong game. I think everybody's going to be tested more. And yes, that should mean the better teams come out on top, like the best teams come out on top. But when you are playing matchup games, it doesn't take much to lose one.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking right now at a graphic that says Liberty coming off undefeated 2023-2024 season. I assume they're talking about football. Does anyone want to Google real quick the score of the Fiesta Bowl against Oregon?
I mean,
and if you want to say it's a 2023, the regular season, they didn't play the regular season in 2024. They did maybe play the Fiesta Bowl in 2024. Didn't go great. Did not go great for Liberty. That's right up there with earlier when they were talking about the college football playoff, that the 5th conference champion, the best group of 5 team will be the 12 seed. It's like, well, maybe, don't have to be. I mean, theoretically, if the ACC or Big 12 champion is really bad and the group of 5 champion, Boise State or someone like that, is undefeated, well, especially if Boise State is undefeated and they beat Oregon, for example, like, they don't have to be the 12 seed. They could be the 4 seed. You can make Iowa State or whoever wins the Big 12 the 12 seed. So that's all fun stuff. I do want to hit on this one real quick from Caveman. I'm pretty logical, and plenty of people that know football agree Ryan Day is on a hot seat. I guess the question is, in that context, what does hot seat mean? Does hot seat mean if he loses to Michigan, he's going to be fired? Because no, that's not. No. If he could lose to Michigan and still win the national championship, are you firing him then? No. Or if they're 11-1 and lose to Michigan, and then they're going to Indianapolis the next week to play the Big Ten championship game, are they firing him then? No, of course not. So it's possible Ryan Day gets fired. Sure. If they go 8-4 this year, maybe. If it is uncovered that he's, I don't know, raising Dalmatians to make coats or something like that, like, yeah, maybe. But Ryan Day losing 1 game to Michigan, like, that one thing alone is absolutely not going to get him fired this year. Like, absolutely not going to happen. So, and I think if, the natty or bust thing, like, even that is kind of, as Tony said, probably oversimplistic. If they get to the national championship game and they're playing Georgia again, and they have a game like the Peach Bowl a couple of years ago, where it goes to the absolute final seconds, and you fall just short of a national championship, that's not a bad season. You'll be disappointed, sure, but that's not a bad season. That's not a season that gets people fired. That's only one team is going to win the national championship this year. And that means that several good teams are not going to win the national championship. And that doesn't automatically mean that the other three coaches of those, that if Ohio State wins, that Sark and Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning should all be fired for not winning. Like that's not how any of this works.
I think I'll just say this. I think people, when they say Ryan Day is on the hot seat, they're telling on themselves. And Tom, even tell me the last head coach that was fired for going 8-4.
The last head coach that was fired for going 8-4 at Ohio State,
anywhere, like, and after like a 2-loss season the year before, like.
Well, now you're putting a lot of parameters on it.
Yeah,
no, I'm just saying, like, well, that's the situation. Like,
okay,
they lost
record at Alabama. Let's see. Mike Shula feels like he might have gotten fired for after an 8-4 season.
But that would be not his first 8-4 season.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Going 8-4 once. All right, Tony.
This feels like a Minnesota move. Minnesota loves hiring coaches that you need to roll with this guy. You're Minnesota. This isn't the 30s. You're not relevant. I'm sorry.
Glenn Mason at Minnesota got fired coming off of a 6-7 season. Mm-hmm. But he was 3-9, 5-6, 8-4, 6-6, 4-7, 8-5, 10-3, 7-5, 7-5, 6-7, and then they fired him. Didn't go great after that.
Jim Tressel in 2004, he had the national championship in the bank, but again, that's a different type of national championship as well, and they had different types of Big Ten championships back then as well. But like 8-4. Would look much worse with a bowl game loss, an ugly loss to a Missouri type 8-5 than but still, like, the fact that 8-5 would be a bad season already tells you that the threshold and the status of the program that he has maintained Ohio State at, like, that's not fireable. You can. It takes more than just losing to Michigan, 8-5. Like, I don't think one season, barring a complete collapse, but even then, like, programs, coaches that are trusted, they get a mulligan. And Ohio State has been one of those programs that really has never had to have mulligans. And so maybe that would be an issue, but it would be so far out of the ordinary for somebody to get fired for losing one game, let alone 4, in my opinion.
Well, let's fire some other coaches then. Lisa Sims says
he's got to go.
So is Mike Norvell in the same spot as Billy Napier, which is jobs on the line. Billy Napier is probably jobs on the line, but that's just because he has just never gotten what was the movie Failure to Launch? Like that's the Billy Napier era at Florida, and their schedule is brutal this year. So he might just not make it to the end of the season. Mike Norvell is sort of in the Ryan Day spot where, he took over a far worse program than Day did, but he has gotten them to the point where they were legitimately a national championship contender before Jordan Travis broke his leg against Northern Alabama or whoever it was in the week before the final week of the season last year. He has gotten that program back on track after years and years in the wilderness. So I don't think he's anywhere close to the hot seat. He may be, if he has a bad year this year, if they go 7-5 this year, and then they go 7-5 again next year, we can maybe have that conversation. But I don't think they're in any rush to fire him because they're probably still paying off. They might still be paying off Willie Taggart. They might still be paying off Jimbo Fisher. I don't remember exactly how long. I don't know. No, Jimbo left out voluntarily, right? So it was Taggart and who else? I think they had someone else who but either way, they might still be paying off Willie Taggart. They're probably also hanging on to their pennies right now because they've got some financial uncertainty depending on the future of their football program and conferences and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think they're in a hurry to write a big check if they don't have to.
Yeah, well, in Norvell, everybody's already expecting them to be like 6-6 this year, so that's already almost baked in, but they may still want to make a move there.
Well, and here's that now that people are expecting people to be 6-6, this is a good reminder from Kevin Chavis, can't overreact to week 0.
Yeah, for sure. But it's fun. The problem is the games aren't big enough. The teams weren't big enough. Let's wait until week 1 before we have broad sweeping overreactions, please.
Do we want to? We are about at the hour mark. Are we ready to call it? You want to keep going? What do you want to do?
No, we can go ahead and call it. I mean, we've got some questions in there, but one thing I'll say: why is Dan Lanning getting so much hype, fellas? He hasn't won a thing from Steve because people don't pay attention. They don't pay attention to what's going on out west. They don't pay attention to the games that he has lost with his aggressiveness. He's new, just like Oregon. It's shiny, so you can't look directly at it. You have to kind of stare off to the side of it. And so you don't necessarily watch it as closely as you can. But it is interesting that they are getting as much and as much credit, and no, they're not being vilified for going into the portal as much as Ohio State, which is interesting as well.
Yeah. And Stephen Cherry wants to know, what was Earl Bruce's record the season he was fired? They were 6-4-1. They were 5-4-1 at the time he was fired. And, that was coming off of a bunch of 9-3 seasons, not a bunch of 11-1 kind of seasons.
Yeah. So that will do. Before we go ahead and hit the thumbs up if you could. We would appreciate that. Of course, you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you have not joined up, please do so. That is a great way to support what we do here as well. So YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. You can find us as well. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys game week.